Welcome to Planning Nutritious Meals While Staying on Budget, Part 8 of the Menu Planning for Assisted Living course, brought to you by American Way University. My name is Angie Danielski, and I will be your guide during this training. Our video segments will feature Krista Bly. Here are more helpful hints to remember regarding leftovers when considering the budget and minimizing waste. When there is food left over at the end of a meal, we can put it into an appropriate storage container and place it either in the refrigerator or freezer. When placing items in the refrigerator, we need to keep in mind that these foods can only be saved for a maximum time frame of 72 hours or 3 days. We should only be storing leftovers in the refrigerator if they will be eaten within that time frame. If the food will not be consumed within 72 hours, the food should be placed in the freezer. If food is saved longer than 72 hours without being frozen, mold can develop on the food, which is hazardous to residents' health if eaten. Frozen foods can be kept over a longer period of time, but we should not serve food to residents that is caked with ice when taken out of the freezer. This is known as freezer burn. Usually, if food is stored properly and kept for a month, it probably will not have freezer burn. If food is kept too long in the refrigerator or freezer, we must throw out the food items, which is wasteful and not very cost-effective. This is why scheduling leftovers once or twice a month can be helpful. Not only will saving leftovers and storing them properly help to minimize the amount of wasted food, it will also help us to save money on the food that we would normally spend each month. When utilizing leftovers for 1 or 2 meals each month, this allows the house not to spend money on the food that would normally be purchased for those meals. While this may not seem like a lot, on average, each meal per person can range between $4 and $10, depending on the meal. If a house has 10 residents and we use the low end to estimate, this is a savings of $40 for 1 meal or $80 for 2 meals. Over the course of a year, this can be $480 to $960 per year. Another important thing to remember when saving leftovers is proper labeling techniques. If food is not labeled in the refrigerator or freezer, we should not use the food as leftovers, which can waste a lot of money and cause the house to overspend on the food budget. Again, if this food is wasted and thrown away, a house then has to spend additional money to purchase food for 1 or 2 meals each month. The label should include what is in the container, such as vegetable soup or meatloaf. Sometimes it is hard to tell what the food item is when it is frozen. This is why labeling it with the name of the item is helpful. We should also include how many servings are in the container. It is helpful when planning a leftover meal to thaw an appropriate amount of food for the residents. It can be hard to guess how many servings are in a container if it is not labeled. Some houses choose to put 1 full meal for 1 person in a container and freeze that to make it easier to determine what to pull out of the freezer. Lastly, the date that the food was made is an important date to include on the label so we know how long the food has been in the freezer. According to the FDA, most food is safe to eat if it has been in the freezer for 1 or 2 months. Proper labeling allows us to make the most of the food that was bought and prepared and avoid waste and money, as well as stretching our dollars spent on food items, which is very important when budgeting for food costs. Using leftovers for 1 or 2 meals a month can be viewed as not having to spend money on 1 or 2 meals a month, which is a potential savings of roughly $500 to $1,000 each year on the low end.
On Thursday, where it says leftovers and cook's choice, always a good thing to have cook's choice and leftovers in at least twice a month, like, because you can, that was something else we talked about at the other class. When there is leftovers, to put it in the freezer, marked what it is, meatloaf, and approximately how many servings are in it. And it's labeled on the outside, so it's not like 4 containers in the freezer of who knows what and how many servings are in there. So we get down to the end of the week, and it's the cook's choice, or it's some leftovers, and you have 9 people you're serving. There's a portion of meatloaf in the freezer for 5 and some leftover something else for 4. You got a general idea what you can pull out and utilize.
This concludes the 8th part of the American Way University training of Planning Nutritious Meals While Staying on Budget, Meal Planning for Assisted Living.